Let's call to order. Roll call, please.
Matt Conant.
Here.
Carm Baines.
Present.
Bruce Johnson. Here. Bill Conley.
Here.
Bo Shepherd. Here. Sean Harris. Here. Wade Kirchner.
Present.
Charlie Hoppin. Here. Drew Stresser. Here. Lack Vergog.
Yes.
Mike Morris.
Here.
Chris Schmidl.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I've asked Matt Conant to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anybody can do that one. But it's amazing how many people can do that. They said they don't say salute pledge. They don't do anything.
Hey, public comment. Members of the public will be allowed to address the Sutter Buttes Flood Control Agency's Board of Directors on items of interest to the public that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Any member of the audience who may wish to bring a matter before the board that has not been placed on the agenda may do so at this time. However, state law provides that no action may be taken on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. Any public discussion? No? Any online? No? Okay. Consent calendar. The consent calendar groups together those items which are considered non-controversial or for which prior policy direction has been given to staff and that require only routine action by the board. The chair will advise the audience that the matters may be adopted in total by one motion. However, the board may, at its option or upon request of a member of the public, consider any matter separately.
Move to approve 1 through 5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Informational and possible approval items. Number 6, presentation and file monthly financial report.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. My name is Seth Wurzel, the agency's budget manager. This is our monthly financial report, and I'm out of the fishbowl. It's kind of cool. All right. So going through our month ending February, we have about 18 million in working capital, and that's reflective of receivables as well as cash in hand. Estimated updated to date from the report, so taking into consideration March and the first part of April, about 21.1 million. And so that's made up of the difference in operating revenues and our capital expenses and our starting balance. But for operating revenue for fiscal year 21-22, we've received 256,000. That'll be moved up to 750,000 through some transfers. The city tends to deposit the larger checks that we get from our tax apportionments into the capital fund, but that'll be trued up to 750,000, and then once we get our balance of the April tax payments, sometime in May or June, we'll have our full 6.5 for the year for our assessment revenue. Capital revenue about 6.7 through March, and then the 12.2. That difference of about 5.4 reflects pending state payments, and I've got the listing of everything up here. This is more to just give you a sense of all the different payments under all the different grant programs we have being in process, but I summarized on the left here. The actual revenue 6.7 and accrued 12.1. That's basically an increase from last month of about 3.8 million, and that's reflected in the some of the assessments that have been collected to date. So in terms of our assessments, down here the local revenues, we've got about it's in the middle section, about 4.2 million. Again, that's about 3.8 million more than last month. The pendings is summarized at the bottom there, 5.4 million. That's of the payments that we've summarized here. That's what's in process now under the various grants. Our expenditures to date, about 111,000 over last month in summary. If you're keeping track of what was reported last month, about 4.8 million in the fiscal year. It's spread out in these categories listed here. The 111,000 was primarily related to the OWA project vegetation. That 382,000 is that number that went up to reflect the expenditures in the last month. Our financing, our next debt service is due in October. That's about 3.8 million. That's broken down between our two series of bonds shown here in the slide. Just to kind of summarize at a high level, as always, just continuing to work on payments and retention releases and continued coordination on the Feather River West Levee project, UFR agreement closeout, and processing payments and reimbursements on the Wildlife Conservation Board and CDFW OWA project grants. The big thing that's coming up in the next month will be our preliminary budget approval in May and our budget hearing in June. And broader agency activities, continue to work on the regional levy impact fee. I believe Michael addressed that. Michael will address that during his report on the recent actions that the city council took, Yuba City Council took, and then continued coordination on the Sutter Bypass East Levee and Lower Feather River. As part of your consent action items, you approved a budget addendum to start work on the Lower Feather River project. So thank you for that. If there's any questions on the report, I'm happy to answer them.
Where interest rates are starting to creep up a little bit, will we start getting anything of consequence on the balances we carry?
No, we have no debt that's tied to any variable interest rates. So our financing, our bonds.
The balances you carry. You explained to me once before.
Yeah.
Who held it, and I can't really remember.
Yeah, so the city of Yuba City is our fiduciary. They hold our treasury. And so, yeah, we might see some more interest yield. I mean, it's very, very, very low, though. I mean, interest rates are creeping up. But I'm sure Spencer Morrison, the city treasurer, will tell you, they've been historically very, very low for the last 7-8 years. And so, public agency treasuries have been yielding next to nothing. So even if we got double of nothing, it's still not going to be of any consequence. Yeah, I mean, the 10-year treasury is kind of like that benchmark, and it's, been, nothing for a very long time. So,
Is it held in LIF or something like that?
So we used to have money. Some of our bond proceeds were that we held separately under a fiduciary with our trustee. So when we issued debt, we received a bunch of cash that didn't sit in Yuba City's treasury. That sat with the trustee, and we invested some of that in LAIF in a bond program, and we've since spent all our bond proceeds. So the use of the money that sits in the city's treasury is completely at the discretion of the city treasurer. We really don't have any input into that. But, we coordinate on cash flow. And so, when we sit around with $10 million in cash, the treasurer will ask, well, how quickly are you going to need that? Are you going to need that in the next 6, 10, 12 months? What are your planned expenditures, so that he can manage the treasury? But the discretion is completely in the hands of the city treasurer in terms of what we do with our cash.
Okay. Yeah, neither one of us got a good answer, Charlie.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're asking me something I know about.
Must be an attorney.
I appreciate the explanation.
Absolutely.
Were there any more questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Project update.
Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. It's great to see almost a full board here this month, so we appreciate that. So the first item I wanted to talk about, Tara, if you can go to the next slide, please. We had a good meeting with Congressman LaMalfa in March. So that was set up by City of Biggs. Our director, Bo, set that up, and we were able to attend and participate in that briefing. So we had it must have been an hour or so of the congressman's time, and we brought him out to one of the completed sections of levee up in Butte County. And we went through various projects, give the congressman an update. The congressman's been working with us since 2013 or so. So he's very familiar with our agency, but I gave him a quick background of who we are, what we do. And we talked about our Feather River West Levee project and the status of it, and that we just achieved that 200-year certification milestone. So he was happy to hear that. We talked about Butte County Fema Remapping and the fact that we completed that portion of Butte County, and that we were launching on the Sutter County Fema Remapping. And due to redistricting, the congressman will be taking over Sutter County. So he had a lot of questions for us about our active projects in Sutter County and what we're looking to accomplish in the future. So he was very engaged on that. So I was very happy to hear about that. We also talked about NFIP reauthorization, and he's near and dear to his heart on that subject matter. Scott Shapiro's been working closely with his staff on the language that we're looking to incorporate in NFIP reauthorization, most specifically to help the agricultural community here in the entire Central Valley, really. We talked about the Orville Wildlife Area, the project that we've completed, and the future projects we're looking to complete. Gave him a good briefing on that overall area. We also talked about Cherokee Canal and the work that we're doing, coordinating with DWR to provide some real maintenance enhancements to that system. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the future here. And then lastly, with the congressman, we informed him of our Cap to Cap trip, which is happening at the end of this month. So it's April 30th through May 4th. And we'll be looking to meet with the congressman when we're out there. And he was welcome to have us come in and meet with him. And so we'll be looking forward to that in the near future. And Bo hand-delivered a thank you letter to the congressman's staff when he was in D.C. a few weeks ago. So that was great. And at the same time, we met Terry DeVos, who is the congressman's new district representative. And she'll be attending some of our meetings in the future to introduce herself to this board and better understand what we do and how the congressman can help us in the future. So we're looking forward to having Terry meet at one of these near-term board meetings. Next slide, please. So I want to give you an update on all the activities that we're working on. So in Feather River West Levee Project 1 closeout, we're still working with our resource agency partners on environmental and cultural resource mitigations. We're getting very close to completing that process. Andrea and I are working closely together on that, on the environmental mitigation projects. We're still working with the Army Corps on the O&M manuals, trying to finalize those. We had a good coordination meeting this morning. We have one every month now to keep the project on track. And the board just approved an amendment with HDR's contract to help finalize that process. In terms of our EVD1 finding, our 200-year certification, Chris Fritz and I are working closely with city member agencies staff so that they can make the findings through a formal process through either at the cities or the counties to comply with SB5. So we're working on that. And working closely with DWR on our real estate transfer process. We've pretty much acquired all the properties now that we needed to acquire. Now we're going through the formal process of transferring those rights over to the state. And it's a fairly complicated process, and we're looking to achieve that by the end of this year. Also working on our 2nd Street encroachments. We had a very positive property owner meeting last month, and we're working closely with the property owners out there. One of the items today that was approved on consent was an amendment with HDR's task order to complete some plans that we're putting together for installing fencing and gates to comply with Central Valley Flood Protection Board standards, and also some vegetation removal. So we're in that process now. We're hoping to finalize those plans, go out to bid, and construct the project this year. So we're looking at finalizing plans in the summer, bidding the project out, and then completing that work probably in the early fall of this year. Lastly, on Feather River, the Army Corps had completed their inspections last year. We're still awaiting the results of those inspections. We want to see if they've red flagged anything throughout their completed Feather River West Levee inspection. And we'll coordinate with the state as appropriate once we receive the results of those inspections. On the Feather River 2, the board just approved task orders. So we'll be launching on that design project for those 1.6 miles of the lower Feather River. So we're excited about that, and we'll be launching that project very soon. Next slide, please. So on our DWR Small Communities Grant, most notably, we're still coordinating with DWR to advance the Sutter Bypass East Levee critical repairs. So we've submitted scopes and budget for that project, and it's under DWR review right now. We anticipate having them draft a funding agreement, and ideally we'll be taking that funding agreement to this board for approval later this summer. We're also advancing work on the bypass under our Small Communities Grant. We got that extension or the amendment. We're working with the Army Corps to get out there and do the drilling that our geotechnical engineer needs to continue our designs and analysis of that system. We need a 408 approval for advancing drilling. So Chris is working closely with Army Corps staff to get our required approvals to get going on that work. On OWA project, we have 3 grants that have been submitted, one with state parks, one with DWR, and one with CDFW. And we're hopeful that we're going to hear some news, hopefully some good news, in June or July of this year. We had heard earlier it was going to be April and May, but it's pushing out a little bit. So hopefully next month we'll hear something, bring it back to the board. Most likely it'll be June or July. At the same time, though, we are advancing some analysis work under our regional flood management planning grant. So we are pursuing some work out there in OWA under an existing grant with the regional flood management planning. For sediment removal, as the board is aware, we completed that $5 million project that was funded by the Natural Resources Agency. We've submitted a grant through CDFW for additional money for additional sediment removal. And once again, we'll hear something in June or July. But the good news is we've been coordinating very closely with Senator Nielsen and Assemblymember Gallagher, and they've each submitted a funding request through the state budget process for general fund money in the amount of $10 million. So we don't know if we're going to be successful to get that money, but both the senator and the assemblyman to do that for this agency was a huge lift, and we'll be looking forward to hearing how that turns out. And we should hear something late May when the state budget gets finalized. It usually gets approved in June if they're on schedule, and we should know something by late May if we're going to be successful to get that money. On regional flood management planning, I talked about the OWA work that we're doing. We're also advancing work for Sutter Bypass. What I wanted to note here this month, there's a meeting on Friday, the Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Commission. There's a technical meeting that I'll be attending. It's a virtual meeting on Friday, and it's to talk about, I think, a lot of the modeling work that is being discussed, hydraulic modeling work. So we'll look forward to attending that meeting, and I'll bring some information back to the board next month regarding that meeting. We're also coordinating on the upcoming round 4 grant. I've notified the board that round 3 is being administered through Trillia. Round 4 is going to be administered through SBFCA. So we'll be the lead on that round of funding. Right now, the state's capped it at $316,000. but they're going to roll another round 5 right after that in about the same amount. So we'll be looking at another 600,000 that we'll be sharing with our regional partners. And we've identified OWA as a project that we would advance some work under, and also the LAFCO process for the Levy District 1, looking to annex MA3. On the federal project, we are working closely with the Corps to finalize the punch list. It's still ongoing. I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon with the Corps to advance that. We're also working with the Corps on our federal crediting to perfect those credits. As you see here, we've estimated around $27 million. The good news there is, if we're able to transfer that credit and work out a deal with SBFCA, we could be looking at getting some significant cash out of that credit that we can't technically use within our basin, but if we can transfer it, we may be able to bring some dollars into our basin. And SBFCA executive director reached out to me last week. He informed me he's going to be having this as an item on his agenda tomorrow. So I'll be listening in on that board meeting to hear what is said. He's teeing it up to his board, informing his board that this is coming, and we'll be looking to enter into an agreement in the near future on that. Lastly, on FEMA remapping, we, like I said, we've completed Butte County. We're advancing the Sutter County FEMA remapping. We're looking at submitting a package to FEMA sometime, hopefully this summer. We're waiting on as-built drawings from Army Corps projects that were completed. And Chris is working with our design team to pull that package together. And once we submit that to FEMA, like I've notified the board in the past, it's going to be a good 3 to 5 year process to get through the FEMA process to do this remapping work. Takes a long time. It took 3 years for the Butte County. This Sutter County is more complicated, so we anticipate it taking longer, but you just never know. But it'll be at least a 3 year effort, if not a little bit longer. And then lastly, on the regional development impact fee, as Seth indicated earlier, Yuba City had been collecting a development impact fee as part of their package for new development. They had a flood component to their fee, and they collected a little over $2.2 million. So they're going to be transferring $1.7 million of that amount to SBFCA to advance our projects for flood protection within our basin. So it's really good news. The council approved that earlier this month, I believe. It was just a couple of weeks ago. And I'm working with the city manager to get that transfer over to SBFCA. So we're excited about that. It'll more than cover the designing and permitting of the Lower Feather River project that we just talked about earlier today. So we're excited about that. So that is my update for this month, and I'll turn it back to Mr. Chairman and see if there's any questions.
Are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, I have one. Michael, on the Feather River West Levee, obviously you encountered a lot of cultural issues, which could kind of be anticipated where it was built, the levees were built on high ground. With the Sutter bypass, do you have to go through allocations of consequence for cultural issues where I wouldn't anticipate there being any issues? I mean, the bypass was put there because it was a low area that lended itself to drainage, so I wouldn't think there would be a lot of cultural sites in an area flooded all the time.
Yeah, we do have to do the cultural resources analysis, but like you said, we don't think we're going to find anything out there. And our investigations so far have shown that there's no known sites in those areas. We actually have to do it for the drillings, for the borings that we want to do. You have to have cultural resources analyzed, and we have to submit that to the Army Corps, and that goes through SHPO. So yeah, not only for the drillings, but for the levee improvement project itself, we do.
Yes.
Question. So Michael, on the FEMA remapping for Butte County that's done, if somebody has any questions, whether it be about their property or where things stand relative to perhaps their property, who would they still contact? Kim Floyd?
Yeah, I mean, it's really should go through the floodplain manager. So through each of the individual cities, whoever issues building permits. Typically, you would start there, but if they can't answer the questions, it's probably better to call Chris or I to get answers there.
Okay, because, and I forget who it was that mentioned it, but I believe it was along the levee. Some of the landowners there had questions about,
Yeah, steer there my way, Bo, and I'll handle it and bring in Chris as necessary.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Anything online? Okay, well, make a motion. You want to make a motion for adjournment?
Second.
Got a first and second.